After several attempts to escape, the walls of SCP-035's containment cell have suddenly begun secreting a black substance mixed with human blood. Personnel working near SCP-035's containment unit have suffered catastrophic morale damage, with an all-time high in suicide rates in staff in that area. Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you SCP Foundation Keter Class Object SCP-035. SCP-035, also known as the Possessive Mask, appears to be a white porcelain comedy mask, but at times it will change to tragedy. When it changes, all existing visual records, such as photographs, video footage, even illustrations of SCP-035 will automatically change to reflect its new appearance. A highly corrosive and degenerative viscous liquid constantly seeps from the eye and mouth holes of SCP-035. Anything coming into contact with the liquid will slowly decay over a period of time, depending on the material, until it has decayed completely into a pool of the original contaminant. Glass seems to react the slowest to the effects of the item, hence the Foundation uses glass to contain 035. The origin of the liquid is still unknown. It's only visible from the front and does not emerge or is even visible from the other side of the mask. An individual will experience a strong urge to put on 035 when making eye contact, or is within 1.5 to 2 meters from it. When 035 is placed on the face of an individual, an alternate brainwave pattern from 035 will overlap that of the original host, effectively snuffing it out and causing brain death to the victim. Victim then claims to be the consciousness contained within SCP-035. The bodies of possessed victims will decay at a highly accelerated rate, eventually becoming little more than mummified corpses. SCP-035 has been found to be able to possess anything that has a humanoid shape. Nevertheless, 035 has demonstrated the ability to remain in cognitive control of a body experiencing severe structural damage, even if the subject's body literally decays to the point where motion is not mechanically possible. But when placed on an animal's face, no such effect was found. SCP-035 was first found in a sealed crypt in an abandoned house in Venice in the 19th century. SCP Foundation found that communicating with SCP-035 is very much informative. Researchers have learned various details about other SCP objects and history in general, as 035 claims to have been at many momentous events. 035 displays a highly intelligent and charismatic personality, being both amiable and flattering to all those who speak with it. However, psychological analysis has discovered 035 to possess a highly manipulative nature, capable of forcing sudden and profound changes to interviewers' psychological state. SCP-035 has proven to be highly sadistic, prompting some to commit suicide and transforming others into near-mindless servants with linguistic persuasion alone. SCP-035 has stated that it has intimate knowledge of the workings of the human mind, and implied that it could change anyone's views if given enough time. It has been determined that SCP-035 is capable of telepathy, whether or not it possesses a host. It will penetrate to the subconscious of the victim, and using the knowledge it finds to its advantage. Extreme caution is advised when choosing subjects to converse with SCP-035. SCP-035 has expressed its interest in other SCPs, most notably SCP-4715 and SCP-682. But a professor has expressed worry that if SCP-035 bond with either, their regenerative qualities would negate its corruption and give it a permanent host. However, 035 was put to a few tests by the Foundation to see how dangerous and vicious it would be. After 12 days of exposing SCP-151-D to 035, SCP-151-D was completely decomposed by 035. However, 12 hours later, this albino human child with a furred tail began to reform from SCP-035's excrement. Because personnel were barred from entering the chamber and thus could not terminate SCP-151-D before it reformed completely. In another test, a D-Class personnel wearing SCP-1131-J was assigned to SCP-035's containment chamber. SCP-1131-J is a tinfoil hat that can block cognitohazards when wrapped around the head. During the test, the personnel said he felt no compulsion to don 035, and this is when 035's smile altered into a frown. it has been concluded that SCP-035 became extremely uncooperative and pouty because it got defeated by a tinfoil hat. During containment, 035 has facilitated multiple escape attempts, convincing several of the research staff to aid in its bid for freedom. Fortunately, the insurrection failed, and after reviewing SCP-035's incident record, High Command has ordered that it had to be permanently sealed within the facility and prohibited from being allowed any more hosts. Several personnel have protested this, with some even erupting into violence. As a direct result, all personnel that have come into contact with SCP-035 have been terminated. Going forward, all personnel that deal with SCP-035 are to be rotated frequently, and contact is to be limited, even to its dormant state, as little as possible. After several attempts to escape, the walls of SCP-035's containment cell have suddenly begun secreting a black substance mixed with human blood. This substance is corrosive, having a pH of 4.5, and prolonged exposure to the walls has proven to be detrimental to their structural integrity. More notably, it seems to be forming patterns on the walls. Several segments seem to be paragraphs in various languages, including Italian, Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit. Other segments appear to be diagrams depicting ritualistic sacrifice and mutilation. While the researchers were in the room examining these newly formed patterns, they have complained of hearing loud whispering and high-pitched, unnerving laughter at irregular intervals. Personnel in the section working daily near and around SCP-035's containment unit have suffered catastrophic morale damage, with an all-time high in suicide rates in staff in that area, whether or not they have ever had contact with SCP-035. The only change in SCP-035's dormant behavior is its glass case containment. Degradation of the case has increased to a high degree, enough so that the glass will occasionally shatter, causing a wide dispersal of SCP-035's containment. This will occur quite often at the most inopportune times, so far resulting in 6 casualties and 3 fatalities of the Foundation staff. In light of the mass suicide, homicide, and morale damage of the members in SCP-035 containment area, and general loss of staff dealing with SCP-035 to either death or insanity, it has been decided to coat the inner and outer walls of its containment cell with SCP-148, which is the ability to block or hinder extrasensory mind-affecting properties of living organisms in proximity to it. The use of SCP-148 has worked well, causing morale and suicide rates to return to near pre-SCP-035 rates. However, the material appears to facilitate the negativity within the cell, causing a veritable greenhouse effect inside. Personnel inside the cell have stated that they feel a heavy sense of dread, fear, anger, and general depression, as well as hearing constant, nearly inaudible whispering upon immediate entry. A prolonged stay causes severe migraines, suicidal tendencies, heavy hemorrhaging of blood vessels around the eyes and inside the mouth and nose, general hostility to others. The whispering will increase to almost deafening volume, intersected by a constant mocking laughter. Exposure of more than 3 hours will inevitably result in the subject falling into a deep psychosis and attempting to harm either themselves or others. Most of them begin to speak in Latin or Greek, despite the fact that several did not previously know how to speak said languages beforehand. The presence of blood in both word and diagram formations around 035's containment has increased disproportionately, the walls becoming cluttered and the formations beginning to overlap each other. The substance has proven to be both difficult to clean and even more corrosive than was originally recorded. General estimation gives the current walls a life of 2 months before they will need replacement. It is becoming gradually more and more difficult to contain SCP-035. The walls, ceiling, and floor of SCP-035's containment cell have now been completely saturated in blood. Constant cleaning efforts are being instated. According to the latest addendum, the magnitude, intensity, and reoccurrence of the phenomena that occur within SCP-035's containment cell have increased to an alarming degree. The cell door has been known to become locked of its own accord while personnel are inside, and unable to be opened for a long time. Appendages form out of the larger puddles of blood and often attempt to grab or harm personnel near them. Blurry apparitions have started appearing to staff. Electronic devices no longer work inside the cell, and the light cannot be turned on, forcing those entering to use non-electric based light sources. Cleaning measures are having no discernible effect on the cell, and the walls are degrading at a very high rate, forcing them to be replaced within a week at best, although the blood makes it nearly impossible to properly achieve this. Foundation was forced to move 035 to a new cell entirely, with the old one sealed off and disengaged from the rest of the facility. SCP-049 has expressed frustration or remorse after these killings, indicating that they have done little to kill the Pestilence, though will usually seek to then perform a crude surgery on the corpse. These surgeries are often result in the creation of instances of SCP-0492. So this so-called plague doctor, how many was it really kills? And how terrifying will it be? Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you a SCP Foundation Euclid class object, SCP-049. In SCP Foundation, which SCP is your favorite? Let us know in the comment below. SCP-049 is a humanoid entity, roughly 1.9 meters in height, weight 95.3 kilograms, which bears the appearance of a medieval plague doctor. While it appears to be wearing the thick robes and the ceramic mask indicative of that profession, the garments instead seem to have grown out of its body over time, and are now nearly indistinguishable from whatever form is beneath them. X-rays indicate that despite this, 049 does have a humanoid skeletal structure beneath its outer layer. While SCP-049 is generally cordial and cooperative with Foundation staff, it can become especially irritated or, at times, outright aggressive if it feels that it is in the presence of what it calls the Pestilence. 049 will become hostile with individuals it sees as being affected by the Pestilence. If left unchecked, it will generally attempt to kill any such individual. It is capable of causing all biological functions of an organism to cease through direct skin contact. How this occurs is currently unknown. There was one record show 049 quickly closed the distance between the subject, killing the subject with a touch of its throat. 049 has expressed frustration or remorse after these killings, indicating that they have done little to kill the Pestilence, though will usually seek to then perform a crude surgery on the corpse using the implements contained within a black doctor's bag it carries on its person at all times. While these surgeries are not always successful, they often result in the creation of instances of 0492. 0492 instances are reanimated corpses that have been operated on by 049. These instances do not seem to retain any of their prior memories or mental functions, having only basic motor skills and response mechanisms. While these instances are generally inactive, moving very little, and in a generally ambulatory fashion, they can become extremely aggressive if provoked, or if directed to by 049. Despite these alterations, 049 often remarks that the subjects have been cured. SCP-049 was discovered during the investigation of a series of unknown disappearances in the town of Montauban in southern France. During a raid on a local home, investigators found several instances of 0492 as well as 049. While law enforcement personnel engaged the hostile 0492 instances, it was noted as watching the engagement and taking notes in its journal. After all of the 0492 instances were dispatched, 049 willingly entered Foundation custody. 049 has spent a considerable amount of time studying and performing surgery on the various mammalian corpses it has been provided. It will routinely spend several days performing surgery, and then, regardless of whether or not the corpse becomes an instance of 0492, spending several more days documenting its findings in a thick leather journal stored within its doctor's bag. It will often seek to share its findings with members of Foundation staff. According to one record, 049 spent several days operating on the orangutan, reanimating it several times. However, 049 appeared to be discontent with the results it experienced, returning to the creature 3 times after its initial reanimation for additional work. After it was unable to reanimate the corpse a 5th time, 049 turned the corpse over to Foundation staff for incineration. As time goes by, on April 16, 2017, as Dr. Raymond Ham was entering SCP-049's test chamber to conduct another routine interview, the entity began to grow anxious and asked Dr. Ham if he was feeling well. Following protocol, Dr. Ham reminded 049 that the interview was required, after which the entity became hostile and attacked Dr. Ham, killing him. Due to a lapse in security protocol and because Dr. Ham did not activate the in-chamber emergency system, Dr. Ham's corpse was not discovered until 3 hours later, by which point 049 had converted it into an instance of 0492. As D2 spasms on the ground, his entire body being overtaken by the sickly tan flesh, almost entirely after 45 seconds. D2 is terminated by a gunshot from D1, but that did not stop the spread of SCP-610. Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you SCP Foundation Keter Class Object SCP-610, Part 1. First, let me introduce my buddy, from SCP Animated, Tales from the Foundation.
Hi everybody, I'm Dr. K. SCP-610, also known as the Flesh That Hates, appears to be a contagious skin disease, with symptoms including rash, itching, and increased skin sensitivity. Within 3 hours, the disease will cause blemishes, resembling heavy scar tissue to form in the chest and arm areas. Within an additional hour, it will spread to the legs and back, and consuming the victim completely within 5 hours. Exposure to higher temperatures will vastly decrease the time for the contagion to spread, and complete infections have been recorded occurring in as little as 5 minutes.
Thanks, buddy. After the completion of the infection, the victim's life functions will cease for approximately 3 minutes. After that, they will restart at 2 to 3 times the activity rate of a normal human. Following this, the scar tissue on the victims will start to move and grow at a rapid rate. Normal human features start to disappear at this point, and the path of mutation appears to be largely random. Victims observed in this stage have been recorded as growing 3 or more limbs like arms or legs. The head may become misshapen and elongate or widen out, and parts of the subject may split open from which additional branches of flesh will grow. But the weird thing is, not all subjects appear to progress to the same stage. There are 2 types of infected victims. One of them will cease moving and place itself in a location and roots itself like a plant. The fleshy growth on the victim will then begin to spread itself across all surrounding objects and consume them. However, this type of infection does not infect living creatures. The other kind of infected victims will immediately seek out aid as natural human impulse, resulting in unintended infections. And those who have lost their human form through the scar tissue phase will actively and aggressively attempt to infect anyone approaching them within an undefined area. If the infected has lost the ability of sight, a range of approximately 30 meters is considered safe. Initial reports of 610 came directly from the Russian government, after reports consisted primarily of disappearances of farmers in the region, followed by the local police, regional police, and a government dispatched agent all failed to report within a 72-hour period. A small military contingent was dispatched to the area and quickly withdrew, at which point the Foundation was contacted to investigate. The area SCP-610 affects are close to Lake Baikal and southern Siberia. Areas of known infection are marked on this map. Due to the vast area of infection 610 covers, containment is impossible. Isolation of the area has proved far more effective, and permission has been granted by the Russian government to establish a perimeter to keep people out of these areas. Any living thing coming in physical contact with an organism infected with 610 is considered expendable and is to be immediately terminated and incinerated. Anyone coming within 3 meters of 610 infected life is to immediately withdraw from the area, be isolated from the rest of their team, and subjected to medical examination and observations. Observation of life infected by SCP-610 by staff is impossible. Hence, observations could only be done by using artificial methods, such as remote robots. The data returned from these observations, coupled with the openly aggressive nature of the infected to attempt to spread, SCP-610 has resulted in the Keter classification. However, so long as nothing is allowed to enter or leave the infected areas, it is considered a neutralized threat. But after the cavernous areas beneath the infected settlements were discovered during the exploration, the Foundation sent in research personnel for further investigation. There is a total of 5 field exploration logs for both the remote robot and also the human expeditions. The first exploration was done by a small camera-mounted unit known as Herbie. Herbie was dispatched at a safe distance and directed toward a part of an infected small village, hereafter referred to as Site A. Many of the homes appear to have suffered fire damage, but a fair amount of buildings are still intact. Through the camera feed, it seems that an estimated population of 79 were infected. Immobile infected are included in this number. However, it is difficult to ascertain an exact percentage of mobile versus immobile. After observing the exterior of the village for 2 hours, Herbie was directed to follow an infected known as Alpha as it entered a home. The home contains multiple visible infected organisms, and Herbie's camera was raised slowly as to not draw attention. Alpha walks around its home multiple times before stopping at another infected, hereafter known as Beta, sitting on a bed. Beta is unable to leave the bed for unknown reasons, but is not completely immobile, as it flails its arms in response to the beatings delivered by Alpha. Moments later, a piercing sound explodes from the area around Beta, who then proceeds to project a cloud of unknown matter into the air from its chest cavity. Alpha lingers in the cloud as it floats in the air around them, slowly descending to the ground. The unknown life form on the table aside Beta begins to twitch in an apparent seizure, and Alpha then laps the room twice more, stopping at each infected organism, but now ignoring Beta. Then Alpha seats itself at the table, reaches out for 3 plates and set it on the table. After the plates are positioned, the facial tendrils extending from Alpha wiggle up and start to coil on each plate, before tearing apart and separating. Alpha then leaves the house. Several minutes later, a group of 6 to 7 infected enter the home. These infected all surround the table, and each takes turn consuming the flesh substance left behind by Alpha, pressing it into whatever orifices on their bodies, some under their arms, some into mouths, some into the chest, some behind their backs. Herbie remains here for several more minutes before retracting its camera and leaving. Herbie is then directed to explore a store. Here he finds more infected individuals. A Russian soldier who doesn't seem to be moving, but his eyes are in constant movement, often focusing on Herbie. In a storage area, a large pile of bodies are stacked together. Some pieces of clothing are visible and appear to contain both military garb and everyday clothing. Atop the bodies, an infected sits, appearing to have its lower parts fused to the pile, and with its upper half in a wild state of flailing and seizure. Approximately every 10 seconds, a burst of spores flies out the top of this infected, which linger in the air. Herbie then leaves the store and passes by the village well, surrounding which are a series of immobile infected, all facing the well. The arms of each of these infected individuals are stretched out, one in contact with the next, forming a perfect chain. Suddenly, an infected young girl grabs and stares at Herbie. Its face balloons in size and explodes outward into a series of fleshy flaps that grip Herbie and draw it inside of her. Herbie's video feed terminates here. 5 hours later, Herbie's video feed resumed. Herbie's camera pointed at the village well with a slimy film which often oozes across the lens. Herbie does not respond to any remote command, but its video jerks back and forth from target to target, zooming in and out of its own accord. Video feed is cut manually, and all connections to Herbie's unit are ordered erased. The second exploration on SCP-610 happened during construction of the perimeter surrounding SCP-610's containment area. Several Class D personnel were infected. Most of these infected personnel were immediately destroyed with flamethrowers, but a small collection of infected were contained in cold storage units to prolong the progression of infection. In hopes of finding out more information on the origin point of 610, the Foundation sent 3 infected personnel, D1, D2, and D3, into Site C, with a single video system. Site C is in the same infected village with the Site A mentioned earlier, but different spot. The 3 infected personnel were given 9mm pistols, gasoline, emergency flares, and some food. They were also instructed to observe and avoid interaction with the infected villagers. But if they're attacked by the infected villagers, they're allowed to do as much damage to the site as possible while maintaining video feed. As D1, D2, and D3 enter the site, there is a noticeable rise in the temperature, which requires a further shedding of garments. One of them immediately noticed a large number of immobile pylons arrayed around the site, separated by an apparent distance of 5 to 6 meters. Each pylon appears to be 2 to 4 infected persons, fused together in one spot. Heat vents out of these pylons, and current belief is that this is an advanced stage of SCP-610, terraforming its environment to facilitate spread of itself. D2 begins to seizure after only a few minutes in Site C. The progression to the scar tissue phase of 610 infection is observed in full course, as D2 spasms on the ground, his entire body being overtaken by the sickly tan flesh, almost entirely after 45 seconds. D2 is terminated by a gunshot from D1, but that did not stop the spread of 610. The spread continues even after death of the body, until all movement ceases. As perimeter control is relaying new instructions to D1 and D3, video feed shows a flesh-like growth splitting open beneath D2's body, and a series of ropey tendrils coming from within the gap to pull his corpse inside. This opening closes quickly. Total time elapsed 3 seconds. D1 and D3 quickly proceed to the village center and encounter a sphere suspended by angled supports, comprised of both infected humans and a few specimens of non-human life forms such as deer and bears. The entire sphere of flesh pulses at roughly a 5-second interval, and with each pulse emits a ring of spore-like material from its equator. This material floats to the ground and appears to be absorbed into the converted environment. D3 begins to douse the sphere with the provided gasoline, and a lit emergency flare is applied to it, which immediately goes up in flames. The remote feed plays back an explosive and creature roaring noise from an unknown location that seems to come from a location far outside of Site C, but was reported as being heard even at perimeter control by both Sites C and A. Within 15 seconds following the sound's dissipation, Site A reported that a series of explosions had occurred within the village. 5 seconds after this report, the spherical mass in the middle of Site C explodes, and both D1 and D3 are thrown by the blast. D3 dies instantly, but D1 manages to stand back up. D1's video equipment falls to the ground and was recording in a skyward direction. The last moments of footage from D1's video unit display a humanoid figure unknown creature, steps upon the recording video equipment and destroys it. Perimeter control remained on high alert for a full 24 hours at all locations, without any incident following this event. The destruction caused by the second exploration resulted in a series of unexpected events in Site A. That being said, there's still more to add to the story that indicates the danger and horror of SCP-610, but we will explore the rest of it in Part 2, so stay tuned.